Hi guys, what's going on and welcome to Bannerlord Online. Now, I think it's safe to say that most of you here have heard about Mount and Blade Bannerlord, but how many of you have heard about its latest mod to transform Bannerlord into an open world MMO? Whilst I'd heard a little about it a few months ago, it wasn't until I was contacted by the guys over at the SKBR clan to come and spend a weekend getting stuck into Bannerlord Online, testing out the new PvP features that were recently introduced, as well as all the existing stuff like leveling, trading, the AI fights, and the existing Bannerlord combat system that we all know and love. Before we dive too deep into some of the PvP stuff though, I guess it's worth taking a step back and getting a little bit of a better idea of what Bannerlord Online is actually all about. The idea is to really convert the strongly single-player Mount and Blade experience into a fully multiplayer version, whilst retaining as much of the sandbox elements as the original game has. That means you and other players can move around in the open world together. You can team up to fight bandits, looters and sea raiders, or head off into the wilderness where you can hunt down other players. Of course, all the usual Bannerlord weapons and armour customization is fully present, plus a fully functional player-driven economy, which is actually why I found myself at the start of the game busily working away in the corner of a field trying to harvest some wheat so I could actually scrape together enough coin for actual weapon so I didn't have to walk around the world trying to punch everything to death. Finally, I also wanted to point out the existing character and party levelling system, which is pretty much still the same as it is in Bannerlord. Yes, you have to go around the towns and villages recruiting peasants, take them into battles to level them up into better units, and yes, as a low-level player you have a leadership cap until you gain that experience through battles to allow you to take on more units, which is why my army consists of 4 poorly equipped peasants and a small dog named Colin. Yet, when I get into battles with my allies, you'll see that we've got hundreds of troops which we can fling into the fray, because they've been prepping for this for a lot longer than I have. But onto the main purpose of this video, and, well actually the reason we got started on this whole thing in the first place. PvP, which has only been very recently introduced to Bannerlord Online, but in effect, anywhere in the wilderness is fair game. There are no fair fights, only winners and losers in this high-stakes game of chess. But luckily for Colin and I, we had a very decent-sized allied army to tag along with, and managed to pounce on a slightly unfortunate group and get stuck into my first PvP fight. As you can see on the battle that we're in now, we started with about 4 players on our team, and we actually split infantry to the centre and put the cavalry on both flanks, and you can see the enemy, significantly smaller army, kind of arrayed before us. Well, apart from you can also see my peasants. My fairly small contingent. But the enemy player decides basically just to go for a frontal cavalry charge. And then you can see our team of cavalry coming round the back, coming up on the flank as we get stuck straight in. Few horses go straight through the front line of my peasants. Not really exactly what they wanted to get stuck into. And immediately some of them start to get killed. But I basically go hell for leather myself on my horse, just trying to control my hero. Not really a lot I'm going to be able to do with my peasants. As you would kind of expect, I don't achieve a great deal, other than getting shot by an arrow and losing almost half my health. I think we managed to kill someone's horse there, so I suppose that's a positive. But the fight rapidly descends into just sort of a chaotic melee. But in reality, we do have the numbers that we need, so we should be able to carry this fight. But it's also worth pointing out that these matches are limited in size in the same sense that they are on the normal Bannerlord. So there's actually more troops in this fight than can reasonably be loaded into one battle. So these fights often descend into a number of different waves, much like using the same system as they do on the normal Bannerlord mode. And as we load into the second round, you can see the status bar at the top shows we are distinctly got the advantage at this point. With quite a few of the enemies killed in the first round, their army is looking significantly more diminished this time around. Although, I still think that was a slightly optimistic arrow shot at the start of the game if I thought I was going to hit anything at that sort of distance. This time, we just go straight for the cavalry, right up the centre, and basically just smash through what's left of the enemy infantry line. And, yeah, really, there's not a lot left to it now. I've actually managed to land a hit on someone, although I still don't think I managed to achieve a kill, and a peasant with a sword almost managed to completely take me out in one hit. It is certainly a pretty brutal combat game. You don't get many second chances if you make a mistake. And whilst you still heal in the open world, healing does take actually quite a long time, so losing both yourself as a hero and your troops is quite a costly thing. So these PvP fights actually mean quite a lot, and it is basically a looting game, so when you kill a player in the open world, you do take a good chunk of his equipment with him as well. But the game isn't all about PvP. You can also get stuck into some pretty challenging boss fights. The guys decided they wanted to show me this, so they dragged me out into the desert to take on some of these desert warlords. As before, whilst this isn't PvP, it's still cooperative, and our team consisted of about 5 players and all their associated units. From what I'd heard though, there was some pretty decent loot drops and equipment to be had from these high level bosses. So I was actually pretty hyped to actually get some of these cool drops, which you'd probably normally struggle to get at my level. As before, these kind of big AI PvE fights take on a similar format to the PvP setup, but you're going to be fighting some pretty challenging enemy units. Because of course the enemy loadout is sort of predetermined, and actually you go against some pretty top tier stuff. So if you're not sort of on your best form, you can quite easily find yourself getting caught out. And kind of like with the PvP, if you die, a lot of your units get killed or a lot of your units get wounded, then you can expect a pretty long sort of waiting period to be able to get healed back up again. So the stakes are pretty high, and you want to be making coordinated attacks with your team to try and minimise your own unit losses. Obviously, me and my 5 people or something I'd brought into this fight didn't really contribute a great deal, and since they're all super low level, it didn't really matter. But I did try and get stuck in a little bit with my own hero, but kind of as you see there, the damage is really high. You can maybe sort of miss a block a couple of times if you've got sort of half decent armour, or else you're going to find yourself pretty dead pretty quickly. And if you get a javelin through the chest, then it can be pretty much game, set and match with one hit. Ooh, we just killed a lancer. Nice. These battles tend to sometimes go for 5 or 6 waves, and you can end up, if you're not careful, getting caught into a fight with, 500 or 600 enemy units, which can, be pretty challenging to end up pulling yourself out of that fight. I'm kind of hoping that they manage to increase the total number of units they can have in a battle over time. I do believe that is something they're working on, trying to get up to 200 v 200. I think it's just a case of trying to get server stability and stuff to work a little bit better like that, so that's something hopefully we can expect for in the future. And it's got to be said, this mod seems to be developing really quite quickly. A lot of new features being introduced all the time, and one they seem to be developing quite a lot. So yeah, certainly one that's worth keeping an eye on as we keep going forwards, and one I'm hopefully going to be playing a little bit more of going forwards as well. Big thanks to all the guys though who helped me get to where we were. It was great to have some help with both equipment and leveling. Really kind of enabled me to get into some of these bigger fights and some of the PvP fights we saw earlier that I just otherwise wouldn't have been able to do in the sort of short time I had available to get into the game. Oh, and there we go, through the chest with a spear. As I said, have to be a bit careful. Make a mistake and it's pretty fatal. But yeah, really enjoyable game, really looking forward to seeing where this mod goes, because it seems to really kind of change the course of Bannerlord and what it is, and turning it into something very different, while still using, the core mechanics of what the game is. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Do let me know what you think in the comments down below, and of course subscribe to the channel for a lot more medieval content. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all on the next video.